They say there is nothing permanent except change. Still, the sheer speed and volume of change these days is staggering. Change in our healthcare centers, where the stakes are the highest and the stresses can overwhelm. Yet new solutions rose to meet the challenges of telehealth, contact tracing, and so much more. We are Juniper Networks. We power connections. We empower change. Change the world.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Juniper Healthcare Virtual Summit. My name is Lawrence Pitt and I'm going to be your host, guide and moderator on this journey today as we hear some really great sessions from specialists, customers and industry analysts on the topic of information technology in healthcare. Thanks so much for joining, but before we dive in, there are a couple of housekeeping items I'd just like to cover over. So starting out with our safe harbor statement here. So this is, I'm not going to go right into this in detail, but basically what we're saying here is about what we're going to be talking about, the information that we're going to be giving, the things that we're talking about with the different products and solutions that are being presented during the event. Then we've got a few agenda items to cover over. So you're in the On24 platform here. It's a really great platform. There's loads of widgets. You can move it around. You can pretty much configure it to deliver the event in the way that you want to see it. Now, a couple of things to note. At the end of the session today, we will have a live Q&A panel with our presenters. I'm going to be inviting you to ask questions via the chat panel. If you have a look, there's a chat panel on the screen. Type them in there, we'll pick them up. If we can answer it in line during the event, we will. Otherwise, we'll look to ask the questions at the end, or if we can't cover it, then we'll email back afterwards. There's also a resources window at the bottom of the screen as well, and in here there's papers and studies and things that you can download about the customers and the solutions that are being discussed here today. If you have any performance issues or you find there's any slowdown, check you haven't got a VPN loaded. This is quite intensive because we've got video and presentations and all kinds of streaming happening, so it's worth unloading a VPN and trying to keep your network connection as clear as you possibly can. But otherwise, I think it's probably about time that we've got things started, really. So what I'd like to do is just go through the agenda very briefly. We're going to start out with James Morgan, who's going to introduce the event. Then we've got a couple of presentations, first from IDC, and then from our own Matt Roberts from Juniper again. Followed by a customer presentation from Jan Ypeman Hospital, and then the Veterans Health Administration, before we move to the panel discussion at the end of our event. So, rolling right on, what I'd like to do now is to introduce our first presenter, James Morgan, who is Vice President of Enterprise Sales for EMEA. James has more than 30 years experience working in ICT. He's really not going to appreciate me saying that, but he does. He's extensively been involved in selling solutions and business transformation at levels right across enterprises, service providers, and into the public sector. James came to Juniper Networks in late 2016 from Infradata, where he had been a founder and the managing director of the UK arm of that business. James, over to you.
Lawrence, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, fully appreciate the time I've spent in the industry. I obviously started very young and have learned an awful lot during those 30 years or so. So the first bullet point, probably the most boring, and don't worry, I'm not going to go into detail about the ins and outs and the rigmaroles of daily activity that I go through, but clearly, you know, where I get my energy, where I get most excited and really appreciate is the conversations and time spent with CIOs of organizations or networking leaders or individuals that are responsible for customer experience and transformation. And you know, that clearly is probably the word of the day, you know, digital transformation, and what does that mean, and how do organizations truly embark on that journey. But during those conversations, there are a number of common themes that pop up, and just to give you sort of a few things that are sort of top of mind from my point of view, you know, more and more, and actually for a number of years now, you know, visibility of data and users is critically important. And of course, you know, we're here to talk a little bit more in detail around the healthcare marketplace, but the Internet of medical things and the sheer volume of elements that are connected to the network, and therefore the challenges around security that brings, you know, without a doubt, there's a nervousness and a fear about being in the newspapers or online articles, for the wrong reasons. And of course, cyber attacks, ransomware is a very real challenge that organizations have to face. And, in terms of being able to do that, what I'm definitely seeing and hearing more and more is organizations moving to a bit more of a service provider-like model, where clearly the network is, and pardon the pun, but the lifeblood of healthcare and the real beating heart of organizations, and that interconnectedness of everything and everyone, really plays a massive role, and it is classed as critical infrastructure. There's no two ways about that, and Juniper obviously have a long heritage in that kind of technology. Value is really important. Return on investments are critically important. There's still a need to be able to justify these expenditures, and organizations are definitely looking at the fit for purpose and fit for the future, as opposed to a brand, which is more and more meaningless in general terms. And fundamentally, user experience, is absolutely paramount. Whether that is of patients or guests or clinicians or staff or things, even, how do we absolutely measure that experience? And you're going to hear a lot more about this during the course of today, of course, and I certainly don't want to steal any thunder. It would be remiss of me in virtually any of the vertical events that we've had, but healthcare more prevalent and more impacting, if I didn't mention the challenging year and a half or so that we've had. But also, of course, the opportunity that brings to really drive, the transformation programs, and what we're seeing is a collapsing of time almost, where organizations are achieving in weeks and months stuff that would have taken years to deliver. And of course, the pandemic absolutely hit healthcare providers really hard, and the mission critical aspect of the network and pop-up centers, etc. How patients and caregivers and responders and volunteers interact with the network is really important. Of course, telemedicine, care over distance, became absolutely crucial overnight, and I'm someone who's taken advantage of that, and again, the network being at the heart of it and making it all possible. But again, from our perspective, not all networks are created all equally, and certainly customers are telling us. But a good network absolutely is a provider and an enabler of those outcomes and predictability and the security and the scalability that's needed around that. We've definitely seen this last year exposing a number of gaps in plans and infrastructure, and certainly helped, as I said earlier, that speed of transformation really come to the fore. And ultimately, it's a window of opportunity to be able to evolve, move ahead, access the funds that were restricted before, funds that are pouring down from governments to enable the capabilities that the expectation has changed forever, for sure. And of course, the experience, fundamentally, it's a true north of Juniper. You're going to hear us talk about it, but how does the network enable the outcomes and the experience to really improve? And you're going to hear about those tangible, proven outcomes today from customers. Again, I'm delighted and really appreciate people for taking the time to be with us, as I appreciate the time you're taking to listen to us as well. And you're definitely going to hear about how, we can deliver actionable insights from that data to be able to qualify safety experiences. Of course, location-based services is something that's going to be incredibly important, improving the coverage, reducing troubleshooting times, where really it can be a life or death matter, and we take that very seriously, and certainly not for granted. And really helping, again, those experiences that can be delivered from an all-seeing and living network in general terms. So that's all I really wanted to say, just in terms of the first few minutes, and to be able to kick this off. I'm really excited about the content we've got lined up for you today. Thank you once again for taking the time. And Lawrence, with that, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks very much, James. Great introduction there. So now I'd like to introduce Silvia Piai, who is the Healthcare Insights Research Director at IDC. In her role, Silvia provides strategic advice and information to vendors and end users around the area of healthcare. Today, Silvia is going to be presenting to us on the role of digital native networks in tomorrow's healthcare enterprise. How can healthcare leverage the digital native to support collaboration across healthcare environments in a totally seamless manner. Silvia?
Thank you very much, Lawrence, and it's a great pleasure being here. And today I would like to give you an overview on how at IDC we see connectedness as the foundation for renewed business agility, helping really to shape the healthcare enterprise of the future. The impact of the pandemic has certainly reiterated the need for healthcare system to move toward what we call value-based healthcare models, where the purpose of a healthcare organization is to maximize the value delivered to patients along their entire journey. The integration of care within the broader healthcare ecosystem and the personalization of services to better adapt to the patient needs are probably the most important business shift that healthcare organizations need to pursue to embrace this value-based paradigm. Delivering integrated and personalized care relies on frictionless information exchange to enable collaboration, to support decision, and to automate workflows. It's a connected ecosystem where the core is data in motion. To deliver a resilient foundation for this ecosystem, healthcare organizations must embrace connectedness. And usually this happens by adopting digital native networks. These are intelligent, use case-centric networks that support the right experience for each application and user. This is actually what IDC calls the future of connectedness, which is a sort of continuum that involves three separate but really interdependent layers that interact continuously. The first layer is about the cycle of data, which really considers how data in motion is created, managed, and consumed. The second layer is about serving and managing the data consumers, be them people, things, processes, or applications. The final and the most important layer, so the outer layer, is the connectivity-driven outcomes that can be achieved when, for instance, data are secure and accessible anywhere, when organizations remain connected and maintain business operation even during a crisis, when an organization can increasingly lean into real-time insights that can be put into action immediately. And also when healthcare organizations can provide richer experience and interaction to their patients, to their clinical workforce, and also to their partners. This framework is essential for healthcare organizations that today really need to reassess their connectivity capabilities, as the performance of many critical applications and processes that are actually supporting the personalization and integration of care depend on the quality of the network. The complexity of healthcare data creation, management, and consumption model is really driving network requirements to new heights. And this is true not just in terms of volumes, bandwidth, but also in terms of flexibility, agility, security, and also in terms of cost management. And this is driving already additional investments in connectivity and also more strategic programming toward virtualized and cloud-based infrastructure. And actually, talking about cloud also in healthcare is finally becoming as a set of solutions through which organizations see the opportunity to achieve the benefits of digital transformation while at the same time mitigating some of the effects of the increasing complexity that I've been describing. Especially in Europe, we are seeing an increasing adoption of hybrid and multi-cloud models that are redefining the parameters of the data centers. And this is true in terms of workloads migration, of course, but also in the way in which we extend the data center. And of course, around the networking, network and security services to support this distributed environment. And in this sense, the case of Munich Leukemia Laboratory in Germany is particularly emblematic. This is an hematology diagnostic lab that they offer a really wide range of diagnostic services, including, for example, molecular genetics, which, as many of you know, drives a huge data volume. Also, they rely on bioinformatic tools that really has high requirements for processing and also the clinical interpretation of the next generation sequencing data. Also, they are a research center, so they need to exchange data with partners almost everywhere in the world. Almost 4 years ago, to cope with this increasing requirement, they turned to a cloud-first strategy, which is now supporting in all their data creation, consumption, analysis, and storage. Thanks to this strategy, they have now a very performing infrastructure that gives them the agility also to grow. But as per the CEO words, anything of this wouldn't be possible without carefully investing in their network capabilities first, ensuring intelligent automation, agility, security, and scalability. And really, agility, scalability, security have a direct impact on healthcare outcomes. Connectivity is the pillar of the future healthcare enterprise, as its performance drives clinical and operational benefits because it enables intelligent and collaborative work models, richer patient experiences and richer engagement, and greater efficiency, greater resilience through automation and higher security. And looking at those three areas more in detail, we can start really with collaboration, because we know that collaboration is really at the heart of the new work models that aim to integrate the pathways for patients. Integrated care will see finally a larger take-up, and we are already seeing that through many initiatives. Think, for example, at the new program for the NHS for integrated care. And these models are driving investments, for example, in cloud-based collaboration solutions, as they are better suited to support the dynamic ecosystem of organization and professionals that are providing care to patients. And this trend is changing the infrastructure strategy of healthcare organizations, who are really looking to support more safely and more reliably this distributed environment. When we talk about collaborative approaches, this really affects also the relationships model that healthcare organizations have with patients, relationships that are currently augmented by the digital tool. Virtual care provision has been key to ensure the safety for patients and also for clinicians and access to care during the pandemic. And James was mentioning that, but I think that many of us can say that we have witnessed this acceleration of virtual care from really a personal experience. But this should not be seen as an emergency measure. At IDC, we really expect investment in the so-called digital front door to continue way beyond the pandemic. Improving the patient experience and patient engagement is the most important business priority for European healthcare providers. And this is done within the mindset of driving convenience, customization, and choice for patients. And it's about really driving seamless experiences, and that will impact both in-campus and off-campus interaction, really along the patient journey, requiring networks to have the capability to support the different requirements and, predict and adapt to the different demand levels. To be sustainable over the long term, the new workforce and the new patient experience require higher level of operational efficiency. And for this, healthcare organizations are increasingly turning to intelligent automation. Automation is having an impact on operation as well as on clinical decision processes. Healthcare organizations, for instance, are leveraging their investments in IoT systems, Internet of Medical Things, to analyze the real-time evolution of business processes, of clinical processes, and drive automation and operative enhancements. At the same time, they are exploring the opportunities for using advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, to predict the evolution of patient condition and to support the overall clinical decision-making process. The future of healthcare enterprise, therefore, depends on this frictionless internal and external collaboration and on the flawless workflow, AI-assisted decision-making, and patient value-driven innovation. And because of this, connectivity has moved into a sort of hyper-paced commitment, if you will. And this commitment requires network to provide more pervasive, anytime, anywhere access and real-time insights and response. So healthcare executives need really to establish and maintain a future of connectedness mindset that will really future-proof their enterprise. Healthcare executives need to have clear what are the context and the challenges that network in the future will cope with, be then the regulatory environment, the need for greater interoperability, scalability, security, as I was mentioning before. But they also need to have clear what are the workforce, the clinical workforce, and the patient requirements in terms of business continuity, trust, pervasiveness, really because the evolution of access technologies is going to impact the opportunities to deliver value in terms of clinical outcomes and in terms of patient experience. So for healthcare organization, it will be important to set up a solid strategy that aims to simplify and fine-tune their infrastructure by assessing what are the requirements across the different workloads, across the different environments, and across the different locations, and how the digital infrastructure will need to scale when these elements change. Then they need to shape the network strategy to the environment, thinking about the user experience, in particular that of patients and of clinicians and nurses. Then they need to sharpen network management operation, focusing on automation, visibility, and security to free up also the time of the IT department so that they can be better focused on supporting the business or the clinicians on those that we call higher value business processes. And finally, they need to serve the organization's success, identifying where the network has an impact on business and clinical outcomes, so that when building the business case for investments over the infrastructure, over the network, this will be backed not only by the IT departments, but also by the clinical and by the business executive. So this was really a short overview and concludes my presentation. And I hope really it helps into connecting the dots between the new generation of network technologies and their impact with the new value-based healthcare models that are going to really define the future of healthcare in Europe, across EMEA, but actually this is a global trend that we are seeing almost everywhere. So now I return the stage back to Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Silvia. And yes, very informative, and you definitely helped with connecting some of the dots in that. So next, we're going to hear from Matt Roberts. Matt Roberts is from Juniper Networks, and he's going to be talking about things that we can do to improve clinical experience through digital transformation with the application of technology to assist with patient care. Matt is the vertical practice lead and our expert at Juniper for healthcare. So, Matt.
Thanks, Lawrence. Hey, everybody. Absolute pleasure being here with you today. I'm going to update you on what I like to call the new Juniper and how our solutions are actually driving better outcomes for the healthcare industry here. Just a quick background on me. Been in healthcare IT for 20 years. Started my career actually working in network closets at a large health system here in the Midwest. I am based in the United States, which then led me to Cerner Corporation. So some of you know Cerner. I lived in hospitals and ambulatory facilities for nearly a decade. I then left Cerner and went over to Brocade to build our global healthcare go-to-market strategy for roughly about 6 years before we were acquired. So just wanted to level set, give you a little bit of background on myself. Some of you might be familiar with Juniper Networks, maybe not so much. Let me just spend a few seconds here on this slide highlighting who we are and what we do. So roughly $4.5 billion company strictly focused on networking and security solutions. We've got over 9,000 employees and presence in 43 countries around the world. Our company cut its teeth in the service provider world and have taken that same carrier grade mindset. Think high performance, think high availability. We've taken it over into the enterprise, which includes several key verticals. Healthcare being one of them. It's a top 3 vertical where we continue to take share, and we continue to really improve what we consider to be the quality of the network experience, but also now the user experience. And when we talk about user experience, we're talking about patients, we're talking about guests, we're talking about clinicians, and a whole assortment of different folks who literally rely on that network, as James pointed out, the lifeblood of the organizations. We also believe that our solutions align very, very, very well to many of the pain points that exist within the industry here today. And so for us, we believe in white glove. We really enjoy rolling up our sleeves here and partnering with our customers. You can see a few of those below to solve some of the toughest challenges that exist within the infrastructure today. So with that, that gives you hopefully a little bit of a picture about who we are and what we do. Now, Silvia, I think, did a fine job highlighting some of the priorities here in her presentation. So I'm going to keep it nice and short and sweet. I continue to believe, as James pointed out, there was a dark cloud with the pandemic, but I continue to believe as we emerge out of this pandemic, the period of time has actually given us a glimpse of what's possible when we actually tap into the power of the potential of digital technologies in healthcare. And so, especially when you start to see the sudden expansion of telehealth, right, and virtual health, consumerism is on the rise. There's a mass amount of different collaboration platforms that we're using. We're seeing health organizations actually take on a little more risk to break down these technology and process silos that have existed over the course of time, which I think is a very, very good thing, right? And so over the course of the past year and a half, I believe that more and more healthcare organizations have actually started to take a more holistic look at one of the most strategic assets of the organization. And you can see the foundational element there being the network dependency, so the network. The bad news, there's still a lot of band-aided networks that are in place today that are essentially layers of APs, switches, routers, firewalls, you name it, which are essentially just cobbled together, right? And so we see it, and we know that they exist. And so we know that they also will not scale, right? And so I like to think of the network as the vascular and immune system of the human body, okay? So it plays a vital role in keeping us healthy. It moves, it protects data and information 24/7, 365. And a healthy network allows us to scale and to support a whole assortment of different applications and technologies that are going to move us and put us in a better position to drive better outcomes and experiences. So for example, AI, right, which has huge potential to make us smarter. We've got better data-driven really decisions at both the technology layer, also at the individual level for, let's say, patient populations and for communities. And so, really what it comes down to is, harnessing the power of AI and how do you harness the power of the network and combined with AI. Now, here's where we start to see the intersection. Okay, so gone are the days, literally, of general perception that the network is good enough, right? And the network being up is actually not the same thing as a good experience, especially in healthcare. This is where we really pioneer this deep insight, as James pointed out a few minutes ago, around service levels, event correlation, switch health, packet captures. We can even get down into those annoying elements like bad cables or misconfigured ports. We're providing a whole new level of insight, right, around a user and a device experience. And the more we do so, the better, right? Because we're getting the visibility that we have never had before. So when you collect over 150 different machine states, you're actually already putting yourself in a better position to understand what in the heck is going on from an infrastructure standpoint, okay? When we talk about assurance, tying things together, right? So tying what's in the air, tying what's on the wire, we know that headless wired IoT devices are everywhere in a hospital. So typically these devices can't phone home, they can't call IT or the help desk when connectivity issues arise. Within our platform, we can actually set parameters to proactively alert, say if an SLE drops below 80%. Okay, so tying the wired and wireless together, whole new level of assurance to the hospital. Automation, common term in the marketplace today, right? When you start to hear You start to think about what can the machines do for you, or what can the network do to better enable you as an organization, opposed to you having to work for the network. Why can't the network actually work for you? And so we hear over and over again the pain that's associated with chasing configuration issues, right? And we know that configuration issues, number one reason for downtime, human error, human intervention. So our belief is that actually machines should help configure machines, or at least be able to, make changes when allowed, or recommend changes before, taking an actual action. You're going to hear shortly from Ludovic at Juniper on how automation is actually helping drive predictable outcomes for his team. So I'm not going to go too much deeper on that, but I wanted to point out that we are big on automation. We're big on helping IT organizations be agile, and having a tool of augmentation, if you will, to help speed up troubleshooting times and to get deeper visibility into what is happening on the network. And then last but not least, relevance. So it might be the most, it might be the most really what I would say relevant topic, not to use the word relevance again, but I will, in healthcare IT. And so how can we use technology to actually transform the hospital experience for patients and for visitors and for clinicians? You're going to hear from Jeff today at the VA on how Bluetooth Low Energy, or BLE, and IoT ports actually provide really a unique experience for the organization. So I won't go too deep on that, but you'll hear from, again, Jeff and from Ludovic here shortly. So where do we fit in? Well, our vision here at Juniper is actually to extend AI across really wired, wireless, and security. So the entire portfolio. That's the mission we're on. That's what makes us completely different from, let's say, 2.5, 3 years ago. Okay, so when I said the new Juniper. A little bit of background. So back in early 2019, we acquired a company called Mist Systems, who you can see on the logo right there. They were an emerging Wi-Fi player, but hear me out. They had this rich data science toolkit with AI capabilities. I don't think the industry fully understood what they were sitting on. So the acquisition was actually beautiful and aligned very, very well to where we were going as a company. Now we've taken this and we've integrated this across our entire switching, our routing, and our security portfolio, which is a very important step to actually, again, the assurance level that I talked about in the last slide. We've also made a couple of other acquisitions that I want to point on the slide. Apstra, it specializes in automation and orchestration in the data center, as well as 128T, which you'll see in the SD-WAN. So we provide a smart session SD-WAN solution that's tunnel-free architecture, eliminates inefficiencies and the cost constraints of traditional WAN products. And again, talking about deep level of visibility across operations and all different aspects of what you see here on this particular slide. But what I'll point out here is telemetry. As I mentioned, the rich data science toolkit, telemetry is where it starts. We feed it to the AI engine, which that AI engine continues to learn and boost efficacy. It's now in its third generation of algorithms, which means it's helping identify proactively and resolve network issues across all different types of industries and segments, obviously being healthcare. It then translates over into virtual assistant, which we call Marvis. So our virtual assistant then translates that into actions, which helps us get closer to the ultimate state of nirvana, which we like to call the self-driving network, okay? So you can kind of see how we feed this all behind the scenes or behind the curtain, if you will. Now, transition, okay? When we say transition is way, it can be such a terrifying word for healthcare at times. Right? I'll be the first one to admit, and I'm sure some of you on the phone, right, hear transition, you roll your eyes, you say, oh boy, here we go. But, in order to thrive in this area, maybe we don't use the word transition. Maybe a certain context is adapting is better. But point of the matter here is that it can be success or failure, right? Based on a livelihood of the organization and being able to scale, right? So remaining status quo can be your worst enemy. James pointed out a few minutes ago about buying something that's more fit for purpose for the organization opposed to buying just a brand. And so if you can't support, you can't secure, and you can't scale your environment, you're actually in a not very good position, right? And you heard Silvia talk just about that a second ago as well. And that's why we concentrate here at Juniper on treating what I call the cause, not the symptom, right, as it relates to the network. So an interesting observation that I'll point out that, this sometimes doesn't start necessarily with the bits and bytes, right, of packet passing. It actually starts at focusing maniacally on the user experience. So think doctors, think nurses, think radiologists, think researchers, so many others that use and rely on that network, right? Whether at the hospital, whether across the WAN, or whether even at the medical home. And this is why we built AI into the network specifically, so we can drive a more measured experience, okay? And so that results in more productive users, better experience for patients as well. Also means far less IT support tickets, which most organizations already have a thin IT staff, okay? Now, if we throw in the industry's only virtual network assistant, it uses NLP, or natural language processing. We can get answers about what's happening on the network, and you've got the ability now to speed up troubleshooting and to make decisions or recommendations to get to that really what I call is rapid state of resolution, or as sometimes IT likes to know, mean time to innocence, right? And so how do I clear my name as fast as say, with so much finger pointing that takes place in healthcare, it's not the network's fault, it's actually something else. Now, all this is built on microservices. So no longer are we asking organizations to install physical controllers and manage those devices. It's not only costly, but it's just not agile anymore, right? So we're talking about modernizing healthcare. So why aren't we looking at modernizing the network? And so this architecture is completely controllerless. I also want to point out that software and feature updates happen weekly behind the scenes with no disruption. It's like literally Christmas every week. And so nobody else in the industry can do exactly what I'm talking about today. And again, when you talk about scale, you talk about utilizing resources, all of this, right, can't be done without microservices. In physical world, you're constrained within boxes. No longer you're constrained within boxes when you move to a microservices cloud model. You lose AP connectivity. Some of you say, well, what happens if I lose connectivity to the cloud? We still function. That's the beautiful part. There's still AP functions. So, the good part is we keep the telemetry data, we keep the config data, and we can pass that back when the connectivity is reestablished. So I want to point that out here really quick as it relates to the difference around the microservices side. Now, again, we talked about relevance on the last 2 slides ago. The most interesting, I think, our access points are like Swiss Army knives that come with a, what I'll call is a patented virtual Bluetooth low energy technology, so VBLE. And it allows you to deploy and move virtual beacons around. Simple click of a mouse, you can drag and drop these and plot these. But we'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly. Here's some of the use cases. But point of the matter is it really enables location-based services when you're ready. We understand this is maybe a crawl, walk, run journey. And so you may not want to do location-based services right up front. But our platform allows you to turn that on when the time is right and you're ready to roll this stuff out. Okay. Now, when we talk about experience, I've hammered, I think, home the point that experience matters. So an interesting part, network actually can play a strategic part of this, whether you realize it or not. And I think most organizations are probably building strategies around patient engagement today. We see and hear it all across the world, right? And it's a paramount right in the middle of the organizational strategy. Imagine being able to use VBLE, though, to greet a patient walking in the front door with a push notification to their mobile device, okay? Then offer up a turn-by-turn, step-by-step navigation experience so that person, right, patient, guest, maybe accompanying them, can make their appointment time, right? They're not missing appointments. Or they're late for their appointments. And then while they're moving through the facility, you pass them, they pass a coffee shop or they pass a gift shop, and you can offer up a digital coupon for, say, 20% off. Okay, so new means to connect, and new means to really build a consumerism platform, if you will, to deeply enroot yourselves to also make sure that patient feels like they're an integrated part of the process, and it's an individualized patient experience for them, right, at a technology level. Now, let's flip the script and let's look at it from a clinician's perspective, okay? So at times, we know patient remutilization can be painful, keep accurate. Bed management's also a nightmare at times. What are the other resources that can get booked within a healthcare setting? So conference room, consultations room. We've got the ability here to actually help staff navigate and spend less energy chasing these things down. So what about also the time and costs that are associated with actually tracking down medical equipment, okay? So with BLE, location-based services, staff has the ability to actually track critical assets second bullet there, such as wheelchairs, pumps, ventilators, vacuums, the list goes on. And we can do it within a 1 to 3 meter proximity, okay, based on the VBLE aspect of the virtual beacons, okay? And then one other quick note too, as clinicians move around, which they always do, right, and they move around the campus, we can prioritize application experience by setting and monitoring customized service levels and knowing who that user is and that device is, right? And so by knowing who they are, we can manage their network experience, which really hasn't been able to be done before, right? When you start to look at the visibility level. So again, exciting things, really making a fundamental difference when you look at the patient engagement side and driving a better experience for those that are actually treating patients. And let's be fair, right? Doctors and nurses shouldn't have to be managing technology. They should actually be doing what they were trained to do, and that's taking care of patients. And if technology can be a byproduct of it, and we can consider it more of a utility service where it just works and it helps them function much better, we're all in a better position. And then last but not least here, IT operations. So I'm going to flip the script back to IT. So biggest benefit you see right out of the gate when you start to look at our platform is reduced support tickets. We have a magical way of fine-tuning the experience. When you can cut down 80 to 90% of your Wi-Fi support tickets, you're already in a good position. I think you're in maybe as good a position as the gentleman here in the picture. We'll see, right? But all joking aside, we've got deep packet captures that are happening in real time, okay? So we capture, like I said earlier, about 150 different machine states. IT staff's no longer chasing ghosts. So think about this, not having to go ask a doctor, not having to go ask a nurse to recreate an issue, because you have the network event and you're in a position to look at this the moment that it happens. Again, microservices, the beauty of it, where we're able to catch this, essentially having unlimited storage, think of it that way, or close to it. And you can't physically do that on controller boxes. And so, that's a huge benefit right out of the gate, where you're not having to go chase somebody down to recreate an issue. Another example, deployed recently at a hospital, and within minutes of going live, we found 2 bad network cables that would have eventually resulted in downtime if they weren't caught, right? So another powerful example on how we can make a fundamental difference right out of the gate. And so we talked about earlier, location-based services. No physical beacons. There's no requirement for that, right? Nor do we require BLE site surveys. You don't need to hang them. You don't need to move them. And maybe the most important element of them all, those of you that might have deployed some of this today, is changing and replacing those batteries, right? That's just a thorn on our side. Whether you have to do that every 6 months or not, it takes hours, man time, right, to go do this. And if we can eliminate it, you're in a better position, right? You can drive a Bluetooth strategy off of that. And so I mentioned also the other important part is that when you look at these particular types of strategies, is proximity close enough to what I really need, right? Sometimes we realize that it may not be. You might need to use RTLS systems or real-time location systems. We integrate with them. That's the beauty. We're based on open standards. We have open APIs, and we integrate very, very, very well. But point of the matter is that we can locate within 1 to 3 meters, as we talked about a little bit before. So I'll leave you with this slide, make it relatively simple. Why are organizations choosing us, and why are we seeing a share shift from some of our competitors? We believe we have the right architecture, and a lot of our customers believe that as well. Same with our partners, right, who are right there with us through the thick and thin. Or you look at the industry analysts, right, they're saying the same thing as well. We believe the architecture is modernized, and it helps with the modernization of the IT posture of all different types of industries. And we understand healthcare is risk adverse, but we also believe that healthcare does need to be modernized. And we believe that this is one way to quickly do and build a foundation that Jeff will probably talk about here in a few minutes about if you build it, they will come, right? And they being some of the use cases. AI driven. So again, AI is not a marketing word here. It's easy to operate. We actually are doing AI and machine learning. Again, going back to the point of allowing the network to work for you, cutting down trouble tickets, but also stop asking the doctors and nurses to recreate issues. Let them focus on what they need to be doing. The network should work for you, and have that served up on a platter. A network that works. Okay, so again, cut our teeth in the service provider world. Healthcare organizations have morphed into service providers, just as James had talked about. better of a position to be in when you start to look at our dominant place, when you start to look at the service provider market and how Juniper is partnered with most of the largest service providers in the world. We understand, again, we tailor, we test, and we understand that, from a healthcare perspective, there's stringent requirements as well, and performance is important. And so we get it, right? And so a network that works is important for you when you're 24/7, 365. Every patient and caregiver experience matters. We understand that, whether doctor, nurse, researcher, patient, right, guest, et cetera. And we've got the visibility, again, that we can provide at that user and device level. And then last but not least, you've heard me beat on this a little bit. I'm not going to go too deep, but indoor location experiences, we now have the ability to turn the experience to be more front of the house, where we can create engagement opportunities with staff, with patients, and a whole assortment of other use cases. And we'll probably talk a little bit about this a little bit more here in our roundtable here shortly. So anyway, Lawrence, back over to you.
Well, thanks very much, Matt. That was great. I mean, we're definitely hearing across the session so far that user experience is going to be absolutely crucial. Cloud is the future, but the sensible application of artificial intelligence data is really what's going to help us in making that happen. Now, we're going to switch gears slightly, and we're going to change over to hearing from a couple of customers. We're going to start with Ludovic van der Gaal from who's the IT infrastructure team lead at Jan Yperman Hospital in Belgium. He's also going to be joining us for the live Q&A panel at the end of this session. Ludovic is going to be talking to us about how we can get a better network experience and how that drives a better overall experience for staff, patients, and visitors to a hospital. So, Ludovic.
Hi, everyone. This is Matt Roberts. I'm the healthcare practice lead at Juniper Networks. Joining me today is Ludovic van der Gaal, the IT infrastructure team lead at Jan Yperman Hospital. Ludovic, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Ludovic, Juniper and Jan Yperman Hospital, we've had a long, strong-standing relationship for several years. Most recently, been deploying the EVPN VXLAN technology across your data centers to ensure better capabilities and also stretching the network, providing high availability. Additionally, the hospital's enhanced care by adopting our AI-driven enterprise solutions. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for your continued trust and support for our solutions and helping move along your digital transformation journey. Can you tell us a little bit more about Jan Yperman's vision and the strategy you're taking to innovate in this era of digitalization?
Yes, so the Jan Yperman Hospital offers a patient-centered, multidisciplinary specialist care with an eye on high quality and efficiency. We have almost 50,000 admissions annually, so patient servicing is very important to us. The regional hospital has long relied on Juniper Network for its campus and data center, and based on proven innovation, it migrates its wireless LAN to the Juniper Wi-Fi that is powered by Mist AI.
That's great. Ludovic, if you don't mind me asking, what challenges did the hospital face before deploying the technology that you have in place today?
So Jan Yperman is a leader in applying technology to enhance the patient care, and Wi-Fi is woven into the clinical and operational workflows. For example, the clinicians and staff rely on several mobile devices to access their applications. Wi-Fi phones keep communication flowing. Patient health is continuously monitored. We could only notice that the Wi-Fi uptime was good in general, but the needle moved. Good Wi-Fi is no longer measured by uptime, but it's measured by user experience. And the end users were complaining about the Wi-Fi, but it was very hard to pinpoint why there was actually a bad experience. In particular, IT observed that some medical devices, including portable cardiac monitors, had difficulty staying connected, and began exploring how AI could change that experience. We were interested in an AI engine that could give us more insights into the network experience and wanted better troubleshooting for the medical Wi-Fi devices and phones.
Interestingly enough, we're very interested in AI as well. Just curious, what outcomes have you already seen with AI-driven enterprise technology?
Our clinicians, staff, patients, and their families can count on a better networking experience, whether they are in the hospital or working across campus. Juniper Mist transformed the network operations experience too. Looking at the service levels gave us a good view and understanding of the user experience. The AI-assisted troubleshooting was able to show us proactively if service levels weren't optimal. In detail, we were able to get the affected item and find a root cause. A strong draw of the Juniper Mist solution was the virtual Bluetooth and the Mist user engagement. The hospital uses a separate real-time location service system to track the location of beds, infusion pumps, and other high-value assets. And patients most likely to wander are monitored also for safety.
I completely agree. Safety is so important right now for healthcare. I mean, as we look back, 2020 brought a lot of changes to many different industries, and particularly the modernization of healthcare. It's more important than ever. I'm curious, how have you embraced technology to adapt the changing needs now of your patients, your clinicians, maybe even some of the researchers that are using your network?
Yeah, the hospital must ensure information can be shared quickly and securely across the medical team, which increases the need for scalability in highly disrupted environment due to COVID situation. The reliance on digital care is at the forefront on everything we were doing. Our responsibility was to ensure that patients who were in the hospital were able to treat it safely and efficiently, but also those still seeking care who may not have been able to come to the hospital were able to digitally connect with medical staff. The hospital wants also to create a closer connection with patients and the care team despite their physical location. So there is a need for flexibility of stretching your network to a hybrid world.
That's very interesting. The closer connection comment you made with patients and the care team ties in extremely well with our mission, Experience First Networking. What's your view on this? How is Jan Ipperman ensuring a great user experience for your patients, for your guests, and even for your clinicians?
In our long relationship with Juniper, we have been pleased to watch and be part of Juniper's transition to much more user-centric focus as it relates to the network. Having much better visibility to see what is actually happening on the network and the ability to proactively provide recommendation or fixes allows us to spend less time troubleshooting issues, which results in better outcomes on the clinical side and the IT side. By having a platform built for digital engagement gives us the art of possible to increase patients, guest, and staff experiences. It can make the difference and make someone feel important or engaged in healthcare decisions, but also allowing us to continually improve upon our patient experience scores.
I completely agree. We as consumers, we're involved more and more in our healthcare decisions every single day, which as a provider allows us to continually focus maniacally upon creating better patient experiences. What's next for Jan Ipperman Hospital?
Now, the hospital can leverage Juniper network for indoor location services, as you said, not only for Wi-Fi, but also for Bluetooth and BLE devices, including asset tracking, wayfinding, occupancy analytics, increasing location accuracy. We're also eliminating the drudgery of changing batteries in location tags. So Juniper Mist gives us some ideas to work with in the future.
Ludwig, thank you so much for your time and for your insight today. I think it's extremely valuable. You are, living and breathing changing times as it relates to healthcare. And so what you've been able to talk about today is really revolutionary when you start to look at doing new elements of new technologies and new functions around the network. And so I'd like to say thank you again for your time and for your insight, and thank you for being with us. We greatly appreciate that. Again, thank you for the partnership.
No problem, Matt. It was great to be able to share our experience.
Well, I'm sure you'll agree that that was a great video there. So next up, we're going to hear from Jeff Sora, who is the CTO for Emerging Healthcare and Technologies, and actually a much bigger title, which Matt will explain, at the Veterans Health Administration. This is the largest integrated healthcare system in the United States. Veterans Health is always looking for more innovative ways to be able to use technology so that they can deliver the best possible experience for people at the hospital. So in this video session, in this conversation, they're going to explain more about how this happens. Over to the video.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Roberts, Healthcare Practice Lead at Juniper Networks. And joining me today is Jeff Sora, who might have the longest title in the world. He's the Chief Technology Officer of Emerging Healthcare and Technology at the U.S. Department of Veterans Health Administration National Simulation Training and Education Center. Jeff, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Matt. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Jeff, the VA health system and Juniper and MIST, we've had a very collaborative relationship over the past several years. I've been amazed at some of these use cases that you have taken from a Wi-Fi perspective in your hospitals. And I'm curious, and I know the audience would be too. Could you tell us a little bit more about the VA's vision and the strategy to help really enhance patient and guest experience?
Sure, Matt, but first let me explain a little bit more about the VA. So the Veterans Health Administration is America's largest integrated healthcare system. We have over 178 hospitals in our enterprise and over 1,000 outpatient clinics. And I think we serve a little bit more than 9 million enrolled veterans every year. So just to give you an idea of the scale of this enterprise, it's always good to put that out on the table. So the vision was more of to improve the patient experience, which is always at the top of the secretary's to-do list, right? So it's one of the areas we wanted to tackle. And what we wanted to do was move into this more of this personalized patient experience. So the idea was to start small, take a small bite of that apple, show a good proof of concept, and then roll into diffusing that to the rest of the enterprise with success.
So Jeff, since we've last talked, you've got a new interesting title. Could you tell us a little bit more about your new responsibilities?
Sure. So I'm the CTO of Emerging Healthcare and Technologies at the National Simulation Training and Education Center. It is a very long title. But we're focused on improving the quality of healthcare services for Americans' vets, right? And fundamentally, I believe that machine learning, AI, and technology ecosystems are the way forward to create better, more personalized experiences for our veterans. And that's exactly what we're executing on. The other thing is, I've been involved in the activation of a program called Simulation Learning Education Assessment and Research Network, dubbed SimLearn. This is where we look at brand new technologies, impactful solutions to the forefront to help veterans care and experiences. So this is a nice, exciting sandbox environment where my team can bring in technologies, old and new, and evaluate them and integrate them and possibly roll them out where we believe the technology can have a positive impact on patient, guests, and researchers and clinicians.
Thanks for sharing that. Oddly enough, your vision aligns extremely well with ours, which, as you're aware of, is focused around the user experience. Would you mind expanding on some of those initial challenges that you and your teams faced?
We really had 3 business challenges to solve from the start. We need a much better guest Wi-Fi experience. We want to track key assets, and we want to ensure patient safety. And lastly, but not least, enhance the ability for us to engage more actively with patients, right? More of this engagement, personal engagement through the technology. Our Lake Nona campus sprawls over 60 acres, and the flagship hospital is about 1.2 million square feet. So with a big facility comes a lot of challenges and coverage. But not only that, people and medical assets get lost, and many of our patients were either late or missing their appointments, as well as our staff was always trying to locate critical equipment that is always on the move, right? Such things, wheelchairs and IV pumps and even ventilators during the COVID spike.
No, that's great. So if you walk me through your journey, how did you select Juniper Mist as this platform here that you've been building as it relates to, again, the guest Wi-Fi experience at Vision 8 specifically and beyond?
Mm-hmm. So it started, my initial thought was this focus on indoor location services. And I was pretty stuck on using BLE for that technology. But I was not looking for another overlay. I could buy solutions that were a BLE solution, let's say, but that would just be another overlay. That back then there was, and it wasn't that they were costly as much as they were hard to manage. They were unmanageable, to say the least. So I wanted something and I wanted an architecture that had a horizontal architecture that could accommodate both reliable, predictable, pervasive Wi-Fi and some indoor location positioning service, right? But as I looked across the market, we were right at the edge of microservices. We were looking at IoT. Matter of fact, I had two engineers on my team. One was for building automation. The other was for asset tracking, right? So I divided them up into two. So this IoT port, microservices, and this introduction of AI for problem solving was really, really curious to me. So Juniper Mist was the only product I found out there that actually had these things. And I had to learn a little bit in the beginning because these concepts are new, these non-controller based or cloud-based controllers, which I thought was fabulous. There was just a lot of those, I didn't have to add another overlay. There were just those aspects alone to me made it the product that I was looking for this.
That's great. I've been able to see a lot of this in action when I obviously came down there and visited you, right? So it was really, really neat, in the Orlando facility and seeing the art of possible becoming actually a bit of a reality. And so I know you were also working on integrating some of the access points into your Stanley electronic door locking system, right? And so would you mind sharing a little bit of the use case around that? Because that's a really interesting one as well.
Yeah, that was an interesting, and again, I knew that I wasn't going to come up with all the ideas, but if I had an infrastructure, it's like if you build an infrastructure and if you build it right, they will come, the ideas will come. So this was an idea that for our vulnerable patient community, right? So our patients in our on-site, we call it a community living center, but it's 120 bed village for continuum of care. So I thought after doing the patient experience, I thought, well, how do I use indoor location services to do more personalized care or precision care? And I thought, well, if we take a traditional WanderGuard solution and we just use the same infrastructure we've already built in and built a geofence, and then I worked with the engineers at Juniper Mist to trigger we had BLE armbands for our patients, and I worked with the team to come up with a way to trigger these doors to open and close based on the doctor's prescribed. If they could, allowing them to have more of their living village area and keeping them safe at the same time.
So when a patient who has a wristband comes close to that door, the door locks. Is that correct? Or
that's correct.
Can you describe a little bit of how that actually works?
Well, basically it's a trigger event, and as you're going towards the door, the RSSI level will get closer and closer and closer, and at a certain threshold, the trigger event locks the door. And we use the IoT port in the back of a missed access point to make that happen, right? So we tie that straight into our physical building.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of different use cases. You mentioned the microservices aspect of it, right? And you kind of take a look back, and we know healthcare can be very risk adverse, and we know that more and more organizations are looking at cloud services to deploy different types of maybe technologies that they were a little bit leery in the past, right? When you start to look at privacy and HIPAA and all the different rules and regulations that you have to follow. When you guys have started to embrace the microservices aspect of MIST, what would you tell other organizations? Would you have any sort of advice for them on how you did your due diligence when you start to look at an architecture like this, opposed to, let's say, a controller-based architecture?
Right. I would look to what does that network look like in 5 years from now? Do you really want to continue on in an architecture that when you run out of a resource that you're constantly adding that resource back in, right? Whether it's a software defined or not, if you're adding one in, but in a microservices architecture, that resource just spins up. You have somewhat unlimited reasons. When you run out of a resource, it just spins it straight up. So I think that's a no-brainer. I really do. And I also think the aspect of AI in the virtual network assistant is incredible, right? Once it finds those anomalies and points them out to you and does dynamic packet capturing, as an operator, I can look down and say, oh my God, let me look at that packet and see what's going on there. It really does improve the network reliability and the overall experience from the person who's running that network to the end user.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I know that there's a lot of organizations that are looking at location-based, or what we'll call blue dot solutions today. Making it easy, it's important. Jeff, curious, what's next for you? And what's next for the VA? What's exciting? What do you have exciting that's coming up?
So what I've got exciting is really digging into is what I've already built upon is getting that diffused to the rest of the enterprise. And then secondly, it's really digging into immersive learning. Where does simulation learning look like in 5 years? And trying to get the enterprise into this new immersive learning using XR and VR technologies. I just think that's really going to be hot. That category is hot right now. And that's what I want to do is really improve the simulation learning experience.
Jeff, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that today. And most importantly, thanks for being here with us today. I appreciate the partnership, and obviously I appreciate you taking us a bit on the journey, right, that you've been going on for the last couple of years, and you've got a lot of exciting things that are coming up, and I wish you the best and I wish you well. So thank you for being here.
Oh, you're most welcome, Matt. Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I enjoyed it.
Hi, welcome back, everybody. So we're going to move on to the panel part of this event now. We've had some really good questions. If you posted something that was very technical or very solution specific, then don't worry, we will be in touch. We don't want to do that in case we dive into one single question for the whole of the time that we've got left. However, let's get started. So we have Silvia Piai, we have Ludwig van Dali, we have James, and we have Matt Roberts here. We've got a few questions, and I want to start with a question that we can just put straight out to the panel. I don't mind who answers this one, but there's a common thread that we've had across all of the presentations that we've seen today, which is that data is driving the outcomes for business. Apart from things like connected devices or being able to see where people are and how devices are performing inside the network, what do you see as other really important areas of the network that could provide the level of information to be able to keep data as important as it is today? And I don't mind who wants to pick this one up.
Sure. I'll pick it up, team, if you'd like me to. So specifically to the network. Yeah. Specific to the network, I'm going to say analytics, right? So as you heard about today, the more visibility, the better. Naturally things that we can provide, but other tools can provide as well. So when you're talking about thousands and thousands of interconnected devices that are riding on the network or they're traversing the network, right? It's important to know what's actually taking place on that network itself. And living in healthcare for 20 years, and probably some of the folks that are listening in can do attest to this, but knowing all the applications and what's traversing the network is a problem, right? It's oftentimes very, very hard to track. Visibility is one of the biggest values, right? So it gives you better ability to understand what's going on, but then how do you fine tune it from there? Just one particular example really quick. We've been working with a really large health system that has hundreds of facilities across their enterprise, right? Crosses multiple regions. And when you start to look at the wide area network, which tends to plague larger health systems, and you really don't know what's going on. You might be knowing what's going on a little bit better at the hospital, but then across the sprawling WAN, they had issues that they didn't even realize that really came down to saturating their circuits with backups that were happening. So Windows 10 backups were going on. They had no awareness about the number of services that were taking place. It was sucking their bandwidth. And so being able to see that at a very focused level and a very detailed level around a specific session, right, that was firing up during business hours, it allowed them to really take a look and fine tune that network to say, hey, maybe some of that should be shifted and being pushed back over commodity internet, or maybe we use MPLS, right, for more critical traffic and push that backup traffic till later in the evening. So net, a lot of undersized circuits, they were pegged, right? The other part of it too is looking at imaging traffic in some of these clinics that wasn't prioritized. And so reprioritization of certain traffic and certain sessions was important. So, I'll stop there, but I'd say analytics, right, and getting that deep level of visibility.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
That's just to echo that really. Funnily enough, I was on a call with a customer yesterday, and there were very similar challenges that they were facing. And at one point, it was even said, look, we just don't know what we don't know. I mean, it's as simple as that. How can you give me that application visibility? Their particular challenge was around VoIP in particular. And just VoIP calls dropping out left, right, and center. Going back to some of the points you were mentioning earlier, Matt, about doctors and nurses being asked to help troubleshoot and diagnose the problem and the fault. And I'm sure Ludwig's got a whole raft of different experiences. But I think it's about the holistic view, a truly integrated platform that can really deliver the experience that everybody's looking for. And in some instances, the experience can just be as simple as, I just need my voice call to go through. I just need to be able to rely on that, let alone a lot more of the more complex use cases and challenges that we've heard about.
Thank you, James.
And I wouldn't rather talk about actually the devices, but it's more about the people or the users that are using the network to connecting. It's how they can interact and provide patient information, monitoring experiences to make better health decisions.
That's actually a very good answer. Yes, it leads me into where I'd like to go next, and I'd like to talk to you about this one, Silvia, if that's okay. With the way that I do my health, one of the benefits to me as a patient is that I'm able to access all of my own records digitally now. So I can book appointments, I can get advice from a doctor, I can order a re-prescription of something. So as a patient, this makes a huge, huge difference. But with everything that we're talking about here, there must be other patient-related benefits that may exist inside the hospital, things I may not even be aware are going to be a benefit to me, that are being driven by the work that we're doing around digitization at the moment. And I wonder if you might have some thoughts on that, Silvia.
Yes, of course. And clearly, as you said, there are some immediate benefits that are very visible within our experience when we interact with healthcare organization and whether we access telehealth or telemonitoring services, or as you said, when we actually are able to, let's say, control our own destiny when it comes to interacting with this healthcare organization. But I think that the greatest advantage for us as a patient from the digitization of healthcare is really around the quality of the healthcare, because here we are embracing a sort of a new data paradigm in healthcare, where healthcare are not just secure and shared within the healthcare organization, but most importantly, as many processes are digitized, the information about the patient are more comprehensive, more complete, and also more real-time thanks to the connected devices. And this allows healthcare organizations to use data in a much more context-relevant way, which drives more precision in the way in which healthcare is delivered. We talked about personalization of services, but it's also personalization of care. So it's really about how data are moving away from the system of record that has been characterizing the, let's say, first wave of investments in digital in healthcare, down to this system of insights, the system of engagement that we have that is driving really the care quality and the experience of patients. I think that's probably the most important benefit that we do not often realize, but clearly has an impact on our experience and on the clinical outcomes.
Thank you very much. I don't know, does anybody else want to add anything?
Sure, Lauren, Silvia, that's a good observation, and I think it's on point, right? So access to care, like I said, the dark cloud of the pandemic, has helped propel, right? What I'd say is maybe that's a good word, right? Accelerate, propel healthcare organizations. And so when you start to look at all the efforts that are going on, and Silvia, I think your slides hit on this to show the efforts that are trying to integrate systems and support really more virtual-based appointments. But, if you look at it holistically here, there's an element of engagement that's going to continue to emerge, right? It's so important when you look at the patient journey. And so there's so many different opportunities now to drive what I'll call digital engagement, right? So from medical home, right, or we're sitting at home, we've got registration portals, to the transportation element of actually maybe coordinating a visit over Uber or Lyft or some sort of taxi service, right? Where we can arrive at the facility as soon as we arrive, and maybe before we walk in or walk in that front door, we're presented with a navigation or a wayfinding experience so that we can get to the appointment, right? So for point A to point B. By the way, some tools are out there today to actually know as soon as you hop in that vehicle, or even before you hop in that vehicle as you left your house, if you are 20 minutes from the hospital and your appointment is in 15 minutes, you can set trigger notifications to alert the staff that, hey, this patient is going to be 5 minutes late, right? So you start to look at some of that when you look at geofencing and the art of the possible. And that's all happening before the actual visit, right? And then you have all the engagement possibilities through the visit itself, right? When you look at the electronic health record and all the different, as Ludwig points out, the different medical devices and engaging technologies that are there. And so you have that during the visit, but then you leave the visit, right? Or you get discharged out of the hospital. So think about the reminders, the notifications that are there, the virtual follow-ups, maybe even monitors or wearables that go home with you that are then communicating back to the provider. It's exciting, right? I mean, I get excited when I see and hear this stuff because we're in the business of making healthcare smarter, right? And making it more intelligent. And so the more proactive we can be, I think we would all agree we're going to be in a better position, and perhaps we can lower maybe the GDP that healthcare seems to to cause to go up across all different types of countries, right? So.
Yeah, you're painting a very almost a glamorous picture there, Matt, in terms of that experience. It's almost like people queuing up, wanting to go to hospital all of a sudden because it's so much greater. But I think the key bit about all of that, and whether you look at the infrastructure or you look at the data correlation and event correlation, and pulling all of that together to ultimately make that experience better is a long journey. I mean, let's be completely honest, but I think it's one that's absolutely worth it. And we talk about experience, but it's also now about expectations. Those expectations are starting to be set, and organizations like the IDC or the VHA are setting those standards that become the norm. And I think that's really exciting. And you know, when I hear you talk, and customers and obviously partners of ours as well, you know, it's incredible to be at the heart of a lot of this transformation. So yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. As I said, hospitals.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this, and I don't want to paint the glamorous picture because nobody probably truly enjoys going to the hospital, but there's an element of hospitality, right? If you start to look at this as well, where you're getting smart rooms and smart technologies there to help, enhance really the experience. So I'm not saying a 5-star hotel, but I am saying a 5-star experience is what, you know, as a consumer, right? We want for our parents, we want for our children, we want for ourselves. So, a crawl, walk, run journey, as you point out, fair enough, right? There's a lot of breaking down of the silos that still has to occur. So
cool. So I'd like to ask Ludovic a question now, if that's okay. So with the AI-driven enterprise, we know that we can get really detailed insights into how a network's performing, the potential for issues, or how things can be tuned. In turn, this is able to drive automated actions that can make those things happen. Now, Ludovic, obviously, you're looking at technologies constantly and evaluating the best way to do these and the best value for the business and everything. How much difference do you see that automation is actually making on a day-to-day to your hospital?
It's a big differentiator because one of the big challenges in the hospital is to keep on maintaining a complex and diverse IT environment with little resources we have. And automation helps our engineers to ease some tasks and have a quicker analysis of potential issues. It buys time, not even for the IT department, but most important for the whole clinical staff and medical workflows. And actually, you can say in the end that it helps us to provide a better patient care.
That's very powerful. And so, again, I'd like to ask Silvia this as a slight follow-up to that, because you were talking in your presentation about the investment in automated processes. And, you know, we know that you're out talking to lots of customers about how they can make the decisions and where they should be going. I mean, are you seeing that healthcare organizations are really starting to gain and grow trust in these technologies and be happier about moving forward in this direction now?
There has certainly been an acceleration during COVID-19 because of the emergency and on the need to really start looking at automating things, even like diagnosis. Let's think about how much AI-driven analysis of medical images has been used during the pandemics, because, you know, radiology was CT scans were kind of the first way to look at and diagnose the COVID-19. But besides the acceleration element, there has been an let's say the trust has been increasing over the years, especially for those kind of more standardized processes where there are less variant involved, and where it's possible to drive real benefits in terms of workflow and in terms of freeing up time, let's say, out of, let's say, more tedious and repetitive tasks. And as a result, really the increase toward automation towards in AI is staggering. We are expecting something like 20% growth in investments, and this really goes across both, let's say, more the operational aspects, but also more on the clinical aspect side. Of course, there are elements of safety, there are elements of data quality that needs to be taken into consideration. But clearly, we have seen a lot of interest, and that are really going beyond the proof of concept and already going into the production mode, which is encouraging.
That's really great to know. Thank you very much for that. So one of the benefits of managing the user experience with AI and automation, is that end users can receive a very personalized delivery. I mean, Matt was talking about this a minute ago with, you know, being able to alert the fact that somebody might be late for an appointment. So obviously location-based services and all of these things are playing a really important role now in the whole patient/guest experience. So I'm going to ask this to Ludovic again, then we can open this one out. But with doctors and nurses and medical devices that are continually on the move in a hospital, but then needing to be in the best place to do their job at a given time. What sort of positive experiences have you got since your deployment?
Having an environment with a lot of diversity of devices, it's needless to say that it's a constant struggle to keep the network experience and expectations high. Every network is subject to its client devices, and there was an absolute need to give us some more detailed insights. And to be honest, mostly medical and legacy devices suffers with those roaming issues. But with Mist AI, we have the abilities for better troubleshooting, root cause analysis, and collecting packet captures. Does AI always solve the problem? No, I don't think so, but it gives us a more and a better information to work with, so we can go in dialogue with the device vendors, for example. The Marvis tool did help us with those roaming issues, but we can also just ask as easily to Marvis if there are any unhappy users that need some attention.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, clearly you can see how it's being really helpful, and as I said, in getting things to the right place for the person who needs it. I don't know, Matt or James, is there anything you'd like to add on this?
Sure, I'll start. I think, a lot of these use cases, to be fair, right, are still somewhere out in the galactic, because I think when you start looking at workflow, right, and that's what's important. It's about a workflow. And so as much as we want to talk about the network, right, when you look at healthcare, it's all about efficiency and all about how do you make somebody's job more, more easy, more seamless, and more integrated. And so when we talk about doctors, you talk about nurses, their core job and sole responsibility is treating patients, right? Not managing some sort of device, not expecting that hourglass, right, to spin. And as soon as it does it, right, it causes frustration and it causes a hamper, if you will, on process. So when you start looking at like location-based services, as I mentioned, some of the things that can be done, let's say with the patient or also with staff, and staff does get lost, right? So indoor navigation in some of the larger health systems, we've had conversations where staff, and newer staff does get lost, and having triage people there, it's maybe a cost for the system, but it's also a productivity means. Hospital greetings and protocols and reminders, even the digital couponing piece. Those are all things where we can touch, right? Digitally touch with the mobile app experience, either patients, guests, or staff. You get into that asset tracking piece, which we talked about: wheelchairs, pumps, vacuums, oxygen, carts, ventilators, right? Those are all critically important. One use case that we're looking at right now is specimen collection, right? And so at the time a specimen is collected, you put it in a bag. There's time lags and delays associated with moving that specimen on the point of collection to actually when it gets read out. And when there are time lags and time delays, obviously diagnoses and impact diagnoses comes into play, right? So how can you make that process more efficient to get the specimen collected and in somebody's hands for actually a readout? So there's all different types of use cases that are emerging, right? So that's the exciting part of it. When you start to look at Blue Dot experience, you start to look at Bluetooth. Again, Jeff said it best: if you build it, they will come. They being the use cases, and so I think we're just right on the cutting edge of seeing a lot of really, really neat things happen. So,
brilliant answer. Thank you very much. And I mean, I think
nothing for me to add on that. Two great answers, of course.
No problem. I mean, I think really, that was such a good answer. We're finished. Thanks very much. I mean, that was a really great panel session. I really appreciate everybody's insights on that and everything everybody said. Just before we do move on out, we do have a little bit of a housekeeping slide here. So just let this one come up. So hopefully everybody can see this. So we are able to carry on the conversation. If you want to keep talking to us about this, we're here. So get in touch with us. You can email us on the address above. You can also get a deeper dive into the technology. So we have the Mist Live event on the 8th of July, which you can register for, and then you can actually see how this technology works. You can find out how things happen. We can organize briefings for you as well. So if you want to actually have a briefing, we've had some really great questions that we haven't been able to dive into. The opportunity there may be to have a customer briefing to really understand the depths of the technology that we've got. The event here is going to be made available on demand. You will receive an email after the event to say thank you very much for joining, and we appreciate the time. There's a survey link in there. We'd really appreciate it if you could complete that survey and let us know how the event went and the things that we can do for the future. Please share it with a colleague as well. Think about things that somebody else might be interested in. We will share all this on email. Otherwise, I'm going to hand over to James, who's actually going to do the final goodbye. Thanks, James.
Well, thanks, Lawrence, and thank you to everybody that's taken part in today's event. Fascinating insight. The future is actually now. If you look about experience, if you look at the technology, and if you look at when that gets into the hands of innovative, creative customers and partners, really anything is possible. So, again, really delighted that we were joined with such amazing presenters. Thanks to everybody for joining, and take care. I look forward to hopefully seeing you physically at some point in the not too distant future. All the very best.
Thank you.